There's a feller who commented on one of my videos that made me feel better about the fact that I do speak out. It does encourage others to speak out. Now, the video in specific that I had made was, it was about family, mostly. How the people who are supposed to have your back, who are supposed to look out for you, sometimes they're just selfish. Or sometimes they already have an idea about you in their head. They've already decided the right and wrong of every situation, haven't bothered to hear your side, and then they expect that their solutions are going to fix a problem they know nothing about. If somebody goes to the hospital and you hear that they went to the hospital because they had a broken leg, all right, fine. You heard they went to the hospital because they got a broken leg. Maybe they did. What happens if they didn't? What happens if they ended up bleeding all over the place and they need some blood? Now, you might happen to have their blood type. And if you'd had the right information, you could have gone down to the hospital, donated blood, and saved that person's life. But you got wrong information, and now that person is dead. How does that feel? You gonna go tell the person who told you, are you gonna go rip that person out and tell them that your friend is dead because they gave you the wrong information? I mean, you can't go back and change it, can you? No, you can't. Most people try to cover it up. All right, so you screwed up. Just admit it. But you can't, can you? Even knowing that it destroys another human being's life, you can't get past your embarrassment. Now, the situation that I had with Natalie and her sister Alicia, doing what they wanted and then getting treated like I was a monster because I did as they asked, that's pretty screwed up. There's also the fact that because of that, I have to deal with real predators. See, while Natalie did not accuse me of raping her or molesting her, there are people that she did speak out about, including her father. And, of course, on my YouTube channel, there's multiple people who knew Natalie, who are aware that this is going on. I got to worry about Natalie's predators. Tim Beeson was Natalie's ex-boyfriend. He didn't just sexually abuse Natalie, he also physically abused Natalie, and then he pulled a trick that's pretty common. He bought her a puppy to try to get her to come back. And then he held that puppy hostage when she left him again. How screwed up is that? Ted Bollinger, that's her real dad, raped his own daughters. Between Tim Beeson and Ted Bollinger, we got a pretty bad crowd there. Meanwhile, from their arrest records and from the things that they have said and posted, we know that both Tim Beeson and Ted Bollinger have now or have had access to firearms, even though neither one of them is supposed to be allowed to touch them. With the rumors that Natalie and Alicia started, that rumor being the whole stalking bullshit in Virginia in 2016, Well, that situation just shows what life is really like when you're not the popular person. Natalie messaged me often telling me that she thought she was in love with me. And that's still in our messages on Facebook. Now here's the thing. For over a year after driving 1,700 miles away from Virginia to get away from Natalie and her sister Alicia and their family, for an entire year after that, I had to deal with a lot of abuse. And that abuse hasn't stopped. It got a lot bigger because Natalie got shot in the head. Now, a lot of the guys I know, they want to know why these girls that they got a crush on will take so much abuse from a certain kind of dude. But he's not even allowed to be honest with her. Well, most of the time it's looks. And beyond looks, it goes to physical contact. And then from there, you've got familiarity. A lot of the guys I know, they say, hey, why does that girl keep going back to the same dude who beats her? By the way, many of these guys become scapegoats. See, the boyfriend beats her up, so she needs a rescue. And who is she going to call to rescue her? Probably some sap who's got a crush on her if she can't get a hold of her family. So that all does come down to what family you have to begin with. But then you got that dude who comes and rescues you. And maybe it's because he's got a crush on you. Maybe it's because he thinks he's in love with you. Or maybe he just really gives a shit about you. Maybe he actually thinks that you're a human being and that when you are in a shitty situation, you deserve a chance. But then when you go back to that dude who beats you, that guy who rescued you goes by the wayside and often becomes the scapegoat. You're now in love with this man who beats you and things are all better because you're in the 2-week honeymoon period. That's right. Those of you who have been through this and been through the counseling sessions of it know exactly what I'm talking about. After he beats you up, there's the part where he misses you and he loves you and he'll never do it again and he'll go to classes. Sure he will. So this guy you're dating, well, oftentimes he's the guy who can't take no for an answer. When guys say, hey, why is that girl that I like? Why is she always after that guy? Well, for the same reason as you, dude. Yes, there are a lot of men who make their decisions based on how a woman looks. And there are a lot of women who will make their decisions based on how a man looks. But also, familiarity is important. Many of the women who I've spoken about since Natalie's death, many of the women whose conversations with me are actually on YouTube. They've broken up with their abusive boyfriends and gone back, some of them several times, since Natalie was killed. A lot of people, when they realized that I didn't kill Natalie, they wanted their hatred to be justified. They wanted it to be magically okay. Now, was I allowed to show any evidence? No, I wasn't. Not in court. Not to the media. Nowhere. Nobody actually cared enough to actually look at the evidence to see what was actually going on before blasting my name up there for millions and millions of people who watch the news to go after. People try pretending like it's one of those, some dude can't take no for an answer. Well, I was never after Natalie's vagina. So there was absolutely zero no's as far as that went because there was no effort. And it's kind of like if someone's beating on your dog, you got a reason to stop them from beating on your dog. But if somebody is not beating on your dog, you've got no reason to tell them, no, you can't. Why would that even enter your mind? Who's going to go beating on dogs? Of course, there are people that do beat on dogs. So it is something that we need to be wary of. But does that mean that we need to treat every single human being like they're going to beat on your dog? There's a lot of different analogies that I use. And a lot of folks want to pretend like some of those analogies are too far-fetched, or that I mean them literally. Now, if you think that I mean those things literally, you're an idiot. And if you're pretending like I'm saying those things literally, it's because it fits your agenda. There's a lot of people who are embarrassed that they were wrong. Rather than admit that they were wrong, they would rather harass me. Not all of them, thank goodness. But there's also the fact that this stuff continues to happen, whether people want to admit it or not. The situation with Natalie was on the news, and every time one of these web sleuth groups wants to do a new thing on Natalie, they spend over half their time, the first half, trying to set me up for the fall. And then, of course, there's the big magic reveal when they're like, oh, well, it was Joseph Michael Lopez. It was some other dude who actually killed Natalie. But how many people actually listen to the whole podcast? So then I end up with people who are harassing me and accusing me of killing people and so on and so forth. It just ain't right. When I went to Virginia at Natalie's request, and I can't exactly call it a request. Before Natalie left for Virginia, she let me know in our messages that she wasn't going to be able to handle Virginia unless I promised to go out there and visit her. So I did. Then she wouldn't get on the plane unless I promised to go to Virginia to visit her. So I did. But then I didn't make it to Virginia fast enough. And she told me that if I wasn't already on the road, she was going to kill herself. And then she tried to kill herself by driving her vehicle into a telephone pole. Within just a few hours of the telephone call where she told me that. How screwed up is that? All my money for the last few years has gone to moving from one place to another, and to trying to get help. Someone to speak up for me. Because when you were called mentally ill, nobody gives a fuck. Anybody can rape you. Anyone can beat you. Anybody can falsely charge you with whatever the fuck they want. And there ain't a goddamn thing you can do about it except for take the abuse. The disabled and the homeless take more abuse than any other group. Matter of fact, there are more hate crimes against the homeless in the United States than all other hate crimes combined, times 5. It only helps our predators that most people just assume that homeless people are mentally ill. And when you call someone mentally ill, you get to take away all of their basic human rights. Then we have these institutions, and I'm not talking about nuthatches necessarily, prisons and jails as well, behavioral health centers, where they don't have an audio recording device and they refuse to allow you access to any such thing. That's because with just the cameras and no audio, these people can do whatever they want to you and sell their own narrative. I spent 7 months locked up for crimes that I didn't commit. People wanted to make all sorts of comments on one of my videos about that. Like, oh, if you hadn't killed that girl, and if you hadn't done this, and if you hadn't done that. And they're naming off stuff that I didn't do. All of it, there is proof that I didn't do. But these are their excuses for attacking me. And attacking my character. And by attacking my character, they get to attack me physically and get away with it. And that is what calling someone mentally ill truly is. It is attacking someone's character. It is saying that they are less than a human being and what they have to say doesn't matter. Their experiences don't matter. Their emotions don't matter. Their physical well-being doesn't matter. And the people that we send to prison for doing horrible things now have a group that they can do these things to and not go to prison for. Robert Warnick is a registered sex offender. He threatened my life on more than one occasion, broke my property, and assaulted me, and got away with it by calling me mentally ill. Sheriff DaCosta has allowed his officers to move on. After refusing to allow me to turn in my predators that are on the department, he let them go and uses that as an excuse for them to be allowed to get away with their crimes. Those of you who have looked up the name Waylon Lolatai know at least a part of my argument against this. Waylon Lolatai assaulted a man in Denver, Colorado. This is Officer Waylon Lolatai. He was let go from Denver Police Department for assaulting a man. And then he assaulted multiple people at his next police officer's job in Boulder, Colorado. A lot of these people, they're friends with each other. They work with each other. I mean, what am I supposed to do? Leslie Snell tries to give my name out on YouTube intentionally and knowing exactly what she was doing. And then she wants to pretend like I threatened her and her family and her husband. They used that as an excuse to deny me a bunch of my rights, including the right to turn in my predators to the sheriff's department. Or the right to even go to the courthouse here in Chapel, Nebraska. Or the right to show up at my own court dates. Or to show evidence. Robert Warnick is friends with Leslie Snell. Leslie Snell works for Dual County Sheriff Scott DaCosta. And Dual County Sheriff Scott DaCosta has done for his deputies the same thing that Boulder Police Department did for Waylon Lolatai, and that Denver Police Department had allowed him to do before that. When a police officer assaults a person, he should be arrested immediately, not allowed to move on to another department and assault more innocent people. That is insane. Meanwhile, Clearview Behavioral Health literally killed people. Officer Lolatai assaulted me over the death of Natalie Bollinger before Natalie's killer was found. Now, the police and the public did everything that they could to drive me completely insane with the number of threats and harassment and people assaulting me, and then the police doing jack shit about it and even taking part in it. Can you imagine what it was like for me? And then people always want to go back to the no means no. No means no, Sean. Well, with all due respect, I was the only dude in Natalie's life not trying to touch her vagina. Somebody had to look out for her. She wasn't looking out for herself. She was doing whatever her sister damn well wanted to do. That's her twin sister, Alicia Bollinger. Now, almost all of my predators have been busted with guns. Well, at least the major ones. Ted Bollinger. Natalie Bollinger. Who else? Tim Beeson. Who else? All of the police officers. I know for a fact Leslie Snell has guns in her house. Her husband loves guns. He also hunts with a bow. My very first arrows that I got from her husband. But the fact is, everything has been done to prevent me from being able to go to court. To prevent me from being able to defend myself, or even allowed. By forcing me into an environment where I will be harmed repeatedly, over and over and over again, denying me my rights, thinking that if they held me long enough, I would eventually just give in. No. There are too many dead people for me to just give in. The police are killing too many for us to just let it go. But then again, that's what Americans are taught, isn't it? You are to look the other way. Look the other way. Look the other way. It is easy to turn the other cheek when it's not your face being smacked. Turn the other cheek. You know, it's easy to tell somebody that when they're tased, they should just take it. Well, when you're being tased, it's a different experience altogether. I can tell you that from experience. Being sprayed with their chemical spray. A lot of you guys talk about how fine you'd be with it, how you could handle it, how it's just like a whiff of pepper. Well, until you've had it on your body and tried to take a shower, well, you don't realize how badly it burns even after it's washed off. Now, there's a lot of people who have made comments to try to be supportive. There's a lot more people who are going through this than just me. There's a lot of stuff I have not been able to go to. A lot of marches and stand-ins for our rights. Because my situation with Natalie Bollinger created a situation where there's no place safe for me in Colorado. I can't go there. If I do, I for surely will not be heard. I will be given another public pretender who will pretend like they can't do their job when in reality they're just not going to. They don't think they're getting paid enough to fight for your rights. So we should do away with public pretenders. Both sides need to be seen in court. Now, there's a lot of people who have tried to turn in my predators. Predators that I turned in first, and nobody would listen or do anything about it. So later on, Clearview, after I'd already told on them, Clearview killed a man. Now they're closed. After I told on Waylon Lolatai for assaulting me in January of 2018, and nobody did anything about it, he assaulted at least 6 more homeless individuals in Boulder, Colorado just that year. I have pretty shitty birthdays. My birthday in 2019, Alicia Bollinger went missing. Now the situation and all that surrounding her disappearance had to do with her dad. Of course they would. They found 18 grams of methamphetamines in the vehicle in Kansas that Alicia and her father were in. They went on a high-speed chase through Oklahoma and Kansas, even though neither one of them was supposed to be allowed to leave the state of Colorado. So what happened next? I get to South Dakota to visit with Jamie and her son, and before I even get off the bus, I've got a phone call from Bobby Forrest, who was also friends with Natalie and Alicia Bollinger at one point. And he tells me that Alicia Bollinger is missing. Well, happy fucking birthday to me, right? So the first thing I did was get on this very YouTube channel and try to help find Alicia. And although Jamie is, I'm sure, going to be pissed off at me for the rest of my life, well, I'm sure she can admit at least that I was trying to do the right thing. I tried to get a hold of multiple news stations in the state of Kansas to try to help, sorry, not Natalie, Alicia after she disappeared. Alicia should have been hauled off to the jail, same as her dad. But she's short and pretty and a white girl. So, of course, they set her up with the whole 9 yards. They set her up with a motel in a cheap neighborhood. Well, first they took her to the hospital, and then they took her to the cheap hotel. And that's where she disappeared from. Now, Bobby Forrest letting me know that Alicia was missing. This is the 3rd time that she had gone missing that Bobby had told me about. I did what I always do. I try to help find the missing person. But no, pretty much the first thing that happened after that is I get people threatening to kill me and threatening to kill my loved ones. What the fuck is wrong with you people? I have no interest in hurting anyone. But I also have no interest in my loved ones being harmed. And if you threaten to harm my loved ones, I'm going to speak out. Also, if you threaten to kill me, but you don't actually follow through, I'm going to tell on you too. There's also the sobriety situation. I don't do drugs. I don't do meth. I don't do coke. I don't do heroin. but I got to deal with a bunch of people who are fucked up on drugs. You look at Natalie Bollinger's tox report, you realize what? That she was on meth and heroin when she was shot in the head by Joseph Lopez. But I have to be fine with this because I have a penis. Right? Isn't that what we want to teach? We pretend like this is a no means no situation. Try to pretend like the terrible Mr. Sean was only interested in the vagina of some underage girl. Meanwhile, she was not an underage girl. She was a legal adult who I never had sex with. We never kissed. We held hands once at Virginia Beach. But people got to have their excuses and they got to have their scapegoats. And meanwhile, if they continue to call me mentally ill, it makes it magically okay not to look at evidence. To pretend like I'm the dangerous one. I am the fucking victim here, for Jesus fucking goddamn Christ's sake. Leslie Snell, when she tried to give my phone number out, not once but twice, already knew that I had, for many years, had issues with people calling me up from restricted numbers because people had been giving my phone number out. When I got a new phone, it should be understandable that I didn't want my phone number being given out. And there are multiple videos on my YouTube where I speak about that. Specifically to her, not just about her, but literally to Leslie Snell about giving out my number. And not just her, but other 911 operators. Dual County Sheriff's Department, when I told them about the threats and harassment and all that I was getting on my phone, their advice was to get a new phone. And then the first thing they do when I get a new phone is that Leslie Snell wants to pull some fucked up shit because she's pissed off. Why? Number one, the phone call that I was trying to, or that she was trying to give my number out on, was about her friend, Robert Warnick. He lives right across the street from her. Now, at the time, and still currently and presently, I have been actively trying to turn in the Dual County Sheriff's Department. The problem is getting someone to listen who's going to speak up for me. When you're called mentally ill, somebody can rape you and get away with it by calling you mentally ill. Now, if you've got all the evidence in the world that you were raped, but no one will look at it, and no one will speak up for you, you just have to take it. Now, a lot of people keep saying, well, just let it all go, let it all go. Leave it behind you. You know what, there's certain shit you don't get to just leave behind. Like when Natalie Bollinger pressures you into going all the way to Virginia by making you feel like she's going to kill herself if you don't go. That's a pretty fucked up thing to do, isn't it? And then when I left, because she was so fucked up on drugs, it was a very fucked up situation over a fucked up phone. And of course, her and her sister fighting over a boy. I drove 1,700 miles to get away from them. And their lies followed me. And the abuse from those lies followed me. The first lie is that they claim that I stalked them. Now, the evidence shows otherwise, but I'm not allowed to show that in court, and the media isn't going to show it. Now, are they? Obviously not. I've tried. And that's just a small part of it. See, it wasn't just that. Maddie Bowe had let me know before I was even out of Virginia. I was trying to let her know what was going on with Natalie and Alicia, and that Natalie was still on heroin. And, well, I figured that would be something that Maddie would understand. But she didn't. She didn't even try. She treated me like shit and pretended I was some sort of terrible monster. She had planned the fucking trip with me. And she went right along with the bullshit. And if Maddie Bowe ended up going missing, I would try to help find her. If Alicia Bollinger ends up going missing again, I will probably try to help find her. But that don't make what they did okay. That don't make what Natalie did okay. That don't make what the police or the media did okay. Or these web sleuth groups. And it sure as hell does not make what the general public has done to me over these things that they heard okay. All of these things were allowed to have happened to me because of the term mentally ill. This magically makes it okay. And then, instead of people dealing with facts, I'm having to deal with old wives' tales. Or people's bias and assumptions. All homeless people must be on drugs. All homeless people must be mentally ill. All men only want one thing, and that's sex. And so on and so forth. God, it's crazy. And then we're dealing with a lot of teachers now having sex with their students and getting busted. And the majority of those teachers are women. Imagine that. Like women never get horny. I have seen a lot of women do a lot of terrible shit because they got drunk off their asses so they could have the courage to throw themselves at some dude. And don't get me wrong, guys do this too. Liquid courage. But then it's different for a guy who gets rejected than it is for a woman who gets rejected. If a woman is rejected, well, you might have to contend with some pretty screwy nature. And it's not natural, so I shouldn't call it nature. But if you turn a woman down for sex, she might try to fuck up your entire life. Damned if you do, damned if you don't. If she gets all drunk and throws herself at you, and you tell her no, she might hold a grudge against you for the rest of your life. Most of the guys that I know hold grudges, but they don't actively pursue any sort of vengeance the way that many of the women that I know do. They will go out of their way to destroy every aspect of a man's life, not caring what they're doing to that man. Thank goodness not all women are like that. But then again, the people who want to do horrible things are the ones who are running the place. That's because the people who are not doing horrible things are also too afraid. They're too afraid of consequences. Either they want to do those terrible things and they're just afraid of getting in trouble, or they want to talk about putting a stop to those horrible things but never commit to action. If you know that your friend is possibly going to be going to prison for a murder that they didn't commit, you know that they did not commit that murder, but you do not show up in court because you're a coward, your friend is not sitting in prison for anything that they did. They are literally sitting in prison for something that you did. You allowed it to happen to them. You were the difference between justice and what we really have. I cannot consider a coward a good person. If I see somebody about to drown a bag full of kittens, I'm not going to watch them drown that bag full of kittens. I'm going to stop them, or at least make the attempt. Whereas most of you would watch and then talk about how horrible it was later. Oh, I felt so bad for those kittens. Are you saying that because you actually feel bad for those kittens, or are you saying that because that's what's expected of you to say? In either event, the kittens are still dead, aren't they? Talking about how bad it is does not put a stop to it. And what's to stop those people from drowning another bag of kittens with the next litter? And the one after that, and the one after that? How many kittens can one asshole kill in a lifetime? You didn't say something. That's on you. You knew your dad was raping your sister and you said nothing. And he did it again and you said nothing. And he did it again and you said nothing. And again and you said nothing. And again and you said nothing. And again and again and again and again and again and again and again. Of course, it's not you being raped, is it? Your sister's getting raped over and over again and you could stop it. But you don't. If you don't know your sister is being raped, it's not your fault. But after that first time, when you first find out, if you say nothing, every single time that your sister gets raped after that is your fault. When your daughter says, "Daddy touched me," and you do nothing, and he does it again and again and again, it's your fault. Your fault. People like to try to justify the horrible things they do to me by pretending like I'm some sort of sexual predator who must have done horrible things with Natalie. When in reality, the people who did those horrible things with Natalie were her father and her ex-boyfriends. People like Joey Moreno and Tim Beeson. People like her father, Ted. Now, all of these predators, when they did something screwed up, wanted to hide behind people who had nothing to do with it. After the fucked up shit that Leslie did, she tried pretending like I was threatening her kids. So somehow crying wolf makes it okay to imprison a man for 7 months. To prevent him from showing evidence. I still have evidence against Leslie Snell, against Sheriff DaCosta. Sorry, there's a train going by. I still have evidence against Robert Warnick. I still have evidence against Natalie Bollinger's stepmothers and her mother and her father and her sister. I still have evidence against their friends. When this shit happens to a man, he's told he just needs to man up. He just needs to ignore it. Eventually it'll pass. Eventually it'll go away. It's not a fucking train here. Alright? The train, it'll pass. It'll stop passing Chapel, Nebraska in about 5 minutes. And I won't even have to hear it anymore. However, that's not how rumors work. It's not just one train on one track. It's one person, like Alicia Bollinger, lying to Maddie Boa before I'm even out of Virginia in 2016, and telling Maddie Boa that I threatened her family. Well, that never happened. I had no reason to threaten Natalie or Alicia Bollinger or their family when I was in Virginia. But people don't care. They have someone they can take it out on. All of my money, now mind you, I am disabled. All of my disability money goes to paying my predators to this day. Right now, I have to try to find a way to get my paperwork from the jail that shows that I've been released so that I can get my disability income back. And more important than that, so that I can get my medical insurance back. So I can actually go and see a doctor if I need to, and I do need to. The 4 people I was trying to take to court, Dual County Sheriff's Department. That would be Scott DaCosta and Leslie Snell. I was also trying to take William Barr to court, and I was trying to take Robert Warnick to court. Those are the 4. So all 4 of them worked together to trump up charges so they could have me illegally locked up and prevent me from showing evidence or going to court against Robert Warnick or Leslie Snell, or from even get anything going against those 2 officers. And then there's the fact that I was working with my autism advocate to do this, and we had called multiple other agencies, and the fact that, well, according to Sergeant Jones, and also according to William Burr, I was supposed to be working with Sergeant Jones a long time ago. Of course, as we all know, just like with Leslie Snell being aware, and her boss, and her fellow employees, most of the harassment that I got over the phone was from restricted numbers. And these law enforcement agencies call from restricted numbers. I didn't get to start working with, I literally didn't get to start working with Sergeant Jones. I was arrested to prevent me from it by the very people I was trying to take to court. I was also illegally prevented from going to court or testifying against those SOBs in their court dates. They did it intentionally to prevent me from going. That way they automatically win in court, and they get to say, oh, well, see, look at this judgment, or look at that judgment. Meanwhile, in every single one of those situations, I was not allowed to go. And what ended up happening? After incarcerating me for 7 months and illegally preventing me from going to my court dates, they had to drop the charges because they had no fucking evidence.